1944. Europe is burning. Across the English Channel, American airfields stretch across the English countryside like scattered seeds, each one alive with the sound of engines, the smell of aviation fuel, and the constant grinding rhythm of men preparing to fly into skies that may not bring them back. The Allied air campaign over occupied Europe is at its most intense. Every day, formations of bombers and their fighter escorts climb into gray English mornings and disappear east. Some come back whole, some come back damaged, some do not come back at all. It is inside this world, on a morning like 100 other mornings, that a pilot named Jake Jacobs walks to his aircraft. He is not famous, he is not a general. He holds the rank of captain, which means he has been around long enough to earn responsibility and young enough to still be flying combat missions himself. He has already seen things that cannot be unseen. He has already flown missions that most men would spend the rest of their lives talking about. He does not talk about them. He just keeps flying. Jake Jacobs grew up understanding what service meant. He came to aviation the way many young American men did in that era, through ambition, physical courage, and something harder to name, a need to be useful, a need to show up when showing up was the hardest possible thing to do. He earned his wings through ground school, formation flying, and instrument training in conditions that would ground commercial aircraft today. By the time he was assigned to a combat unit, he had accumulated enough hours in the air to know that skill mattered, but so did something else. Call it composure. Call it the ability to think clearly when everything around you is designed to make clear thinking impossible. The Distinguished Flying Cross is not handed out lightly. Congress established it in 1926 to honor members of the United States Armed Forces who distinguish themselves by heroism or extraordinary achievement in aerial flight. The word that matters is extraordinary. Not competent, not brave in the ordinary sense that every combat pilot must be brave simply to climb into the cockpit. Extraordinary. Many men flew the entire war without earning one. Jake Jacobs earned two. The first came in the autumn of 1944. The mission briefing that morning was like most mission briefings: a room full of men, a map on the wall, a target marked in red, and a silence between the words that everyone in the room understood. The objective was a strategic position deep inside contested airspace. Routes had been calculated, anti-aircraft positions had been pre-mapped, timing had been synchronized down to the minute. On paper, the plan was sound. War does not care about paper. Jacobs was not the mission commander that day. He was flying as part of a larger formation, his role defined, his position assigned. The job was straightforward in the way that combat missions are always described as straightforward, until the moment they are not. 40 minutes into the mission, the formation hit weather that had not been in the forecast. Cloud cover that was supposed to be manageable became a wall of gray that swallowed aircraft whole. Visibility collapsed. The formation began to come apart as pilots lost visual contact with each other. This was not the enemy shooting at them. This was the sky itself, indifferent and enormous, pulling the formation to pieces. Jacobs held his position. He kept his heading. He got on the radio and worked to keep the formation anchored, his voice steady in the headsets of men who needed to hear something steady. Then the flak began. It started below them and walked upward, the gunners on the ground adjusting their aim with the methodical patience of men who have done this before and know they have time. The dark flowers of exploding shells began to appear at formation altitude. Each burst, close enough to feel, came as a physical shock through the airframe, a hammer blow, the sharp smell of cordite cutting through the oxygen mask. One aircraft took a direct hit. It did not explode immediately. Combat aircraft are built to absorb punishment. But the damage was catastrophic. An engine was gone. Hydraulic lines were severed. The aircraft fell out of formation and began a descent that was slow at first, then faster, the crew fighting to maintain control as systems failed around them. They were alive, but they were running out of options and altitude. There is no regulation that requires a pilot to break formation under fire to go after a stricken aircraft. There is, in fact, a strong tactical argument for holding formation. Breaking away reduces the defensive firepower of the group. It exposes your own aircraft to fire that is already finding its range. Every experienced pilot in that formation knew this. Jake Jacobs broke formation anyway. He brought his aircraft down and alongside the damaged plane, placing himself directly inside the flak envelope that was still adjusting to the lower altitude. He came up beside the stricken crew and he stayed there, providing visual reference, relaying their position over the radio, coordinating whatever rescue assets could be brought to bear, and talking the crew through each decision they had to make as the ground came up beneath them. He stayed with them for the full duration of what was necessary. His own aircraft took shrapnel. Systems were damaged. He was flying a wounded machine over hostile territory, alone, below the formation that had continued on without him, inside the kill zone of anti-aircraft guns that had already proven they could hit what they aimed at. He brought his aircraft home. The crew he had guided to safety also survived. When the recommendation for the Distinguished Flying Cross was written, the language was precise, the way military language always is. Extraordinary achievement. Voluntary assumption of risk. Actions directly contributing to the survival of fellow airmen. In plain language, he went back when he did not have to. That was the first medal. He did not go home after that. The war needed experienced pilots, and Jake Jacobs was experienced. So he kept flying, kept showing up to briefings, kept walking out to his aircraft in the gray English mornings and climbing into the cockpit and going east. Between missions, he was known as a man who did not talk much about what he had seen. He mentored younger pilots. He was steady. Not performing steadiness, but carrying it the way a man carries something he has earned through a process that was not gentle. His commanding officers trusted him. When difficult missions needed experienced leadership, Jacobs was the name that came up. Which is how he found himself in the winter of 1944, sitting at a briefing table looking at another map with another target marked in red. This mission went well at first. The formation reached the target area, the objectives were met. On the return leg, with the hard part technically behind them, the formation turned for home. That is when the call came over the radio. It was the voice of a younger pilot, controlled the way you learn to be controlled when you are trained to keep your voice level even when you are frightened, reporting that his aircraft had taken serious damage over the target. Engine failure, structural damage. He was losing altitude, and he was not confident he could make it back. The main formation continued home. That was the correct decision. A formation cannot hold together around every casualty. Jacobs left the formation. He dropped back and found the damaged aircraft and pulled up alongside it. What he saw when he got close was worse than the radio report had suggested. It was not just one engine. The control surfaces were partially compromised. The pilot was working hard to keep the aircraft flying in a straight line, and the mathematics of altitude and distance and rate of descent were not adding up in his favor. Jacobs got on the radio and started talking, not panicking, not rushing, just a calm, experienced voice walking a younger pilot through each decision, one at a time, the way you work a difficult problem when time is short and the margin for error is gone. They were now alone. 2 aircraft, 1 badly damaged, flying low and slow over terrain that was not friendly. This is exactly the kind of target that enemy fighter pilots look for. The separated aircraft, the one that cannot run, the one with nowhere to go. The enemy fighters found them. What followed was not a dogfight in the classic sense. Jacobs was not trying to win an engagement. He was trying to survive one long enough to get a damaged aircraft across the line into friendly territory. Every maneuver he flew was designed around one thing, keeping himself between the threat and the aircraft he was protecting. He drew fire. He denied attack angles. He kept his own aircraft between the enemy and the crew that needed to get home. His aircraft took cannon fire. Warning lights came on. The airframe was being damaged in real time, and he kept flying it. The border between hostile and friendly territory passed beneath them. The damaged aircraft was still in the air. They found a landing strip, not home base, just flat ground long enough and firm enough to accept an aircraft in trouble. The damaged plane came in hard. It bounced, it skidded, it stopped. The crew got out. Jacobs made one low pass overhead, wings level, confirming with his own eyes that the men were out of the aircraft and standing on the ground. Then he turned north and flew his damaged aircraft home. When he landed, the ground crew walked around his aircraft and said nothing for a moment. The damage was visible and significant. That it had flown home at all was a testament to the men who built it and the man who flew it. Jacobs climbed out of the cockpit, went to the debriefing room, sat down, and told them what had happened in plain, factual language. 2 crews, 2 aircraft, both home. The second Distinguished Flying Cross was awarded for outstanding airmanship, selfless disregard for personal safety, and actions reflecting the highest credit upon himself and the United States Air Force. Those words are accurate, but they cannot carry the full weight of what they describe. The weight of a man who had already done the extraordinary thing once, who understood exactly what he was risking because he had already risked it, and who made the same choice the second time without hesitation. That is not something a citation can fully hold. The crews he saved went home. Some had families waiting. Some started families after. The lives that continued because of those 2 decisions in those 2 moments in those wartime skies are beyond counting now. The chain runs too far forward and branches too many times to follow. There is a question that never fully goes away when you study men like Jake Jacobs. What makes someone go back? When the mission is finished, when coming home is possible, when no one is watching and no one would blame you for saving yourself? What is it exactly that turns a man around? For Jacobs, the answer seems to have lived somewhere quiet and unspoken inside him. Not heroism as theater, not courage as a statement made to anyone watching. Just the simple, unglamorous knowledge that someone out there needed help, and he was the one who could give it. The angels in the clouds that give this story its name come from the old language of aviators, the sense that in the worst moments of flight, something beyond human skill holds the aircraft up one more minute, guides the hand on the stick, keeps the engine running just long enough. Maybe that is true, or maybe the angel was already in the cockpit. Either way, the men came home, and Captain Jake Jacobs wore 2 distinguished flying crosses on his chest and said very little about them and went on with his life, the way that kind of man always does.